in flames.
I attended the scene in about 5 or 6 minutes and realized it was totally involved.
The St. Jacobs Farmers Market in ruins.
The roof had collapsed within a half an hour of us being here.
Dozens of vendors left devastated.
It's a livelihood for me and my family, plus it's a livelihood for a lot of my staff.
What's next for those who've lost their livelihood?
Our goal is to get these businesses up and running as soon as we can.
And looking back at a piece of local history.
My kids were raised here. They would come here every Saturday morning with us.
The memories and the magic of a market that drew millions.
The video is hard to watch, a piece of local history, a community meeting place, and a well-known tourist destination has been devoured by fire. Crews were called to the St. Jacobs Farmers Market just before 2 o'clock this morning. Smoke and flames followed by sirens pulled people who live nearby from their beds in the middle of the night. The fire, though, spread quickly. The building collapsed less than an hour after crews arrived. Today, there is nothing left. The market sits in ruins. 60 vendors were housed inside this building, selling everything from specialty foods to fresh produce, as well as crafts and home decor. The post and beam wood structure was 2 floors spanning 24,000 square feet. It has been gutted. We can tell you the initial damage estimate was approximately $1 million. That's now been upgraded to more than $2 million. Good evening and welcome to a special edition of CTV News at 6 o'clock. We are live in St. Jacobs tonight, where people are still struggling to come to terms with everything that has been lost. Beginning our team coverage tonight is CTV's Max Wark. Max, you've been speaking to fire officials today. What do they know about this point? What happened last night?
Well, Megan, at this point, the fire isn't considered suspicious. However, fire crews are looking at several possibilities and several sources, trying to determine a cause.
Woolwich fire crews responded shortly before 2 this morning. 40 firefighters from 4 different stations arrived within minutes, but it was already too late.
Most of the work was trying to protect exposures to the other buildings because the building was lost at that point.
As flames shot into the night's sky, a few dozen people stopped to watch the fire consume the building.
We saw like 5 torches of light, it seemed, so we went towards it. And then it was the fire coming out of the windows.
Within a half hour, Eilish Keshubek says the building's roof caught fire, then the structure collapsed.
And I just watched the whole thing burn down. It was, like, terrible.
Built from wooden beams, the market's first and second floors were open concept, allowing the fire to travel quickly and freely. Add 60 vendors selling quilts, clothing, and food, and you have what officials call a high fire load.
We have not gone into the interior to look at anything. It's still pretty hot in there, so we want to make sure it's safe beforehand.
Waterloo Regional Police detectives were on scene to rule out criminal activity. The Ontario Fire Marshal's office has been called in to investigate.
Now, the building was equipped with several surveillance cameras, and investigators say they'll be looking at those tapes, trying to determine a cause.
Neighbors saw lightning strikes in the area around 11 last night, but by 3 in the morning, the sky was clear.
I remember standing outside and looking up and saying, it's nice weather for me walking around in, actually, but it was a very thick fog.
Damage will likely touch the $2 million mark, adding together the building and the vendor's contents.
But it's going to add up pretty quickly.
Fire investigators say the market's only salvation early this morning would have come from a sprinkler system, which this building did not have.
It was built to today's code, but back then it wasn't required to be sprinkled. Fortunately, we had a fire alarm system installed earlier this year in there.
Now, the building is fully insured, and insurance adjusters were on site early this morning, and individual vendors should also be insured, and that liability may play a factor when and if the cause is determined.
And certainly we will continue to ask those questions as the hours and days continue to pass here. Thank you very much, Max. Well, incredible photos have been sent into our newsroom all day. They capture incredible images. Many of the people who sent them in smelled the smoke and heard the sirens. One viewer, Brent Mackey, captured these unbelievable images as the building burned to the ground. They are hard to look at, once again, especially for those who made weekly trips to the market to meet friends, buy fresh produce, and take in the sights and sounds. Suffering a big hit today are the dozens of vendors who woke up this morning only to find out they had lost everything. And CTV's Karina Slugs has been talking to some of those vendors today. Obviously, they are heartbroken, Karina.
Absolutely, Megan. Devastating is the word that many people are using to describe this loss. And several of the vendors who are out here today surveying the damage tell me that while the material items can be replaced, it's the loss of productivity while the market is shut down that's going to hurt them the most.
My goodness, unbelievable. It's just so hard to believe it's all gone.
Looking at the shell of the building they worked in for years, Nancy and Lloyd Kipfer can barely speak about all that's been lost.
I just feel for the people that lost all the things they did, and just...
They and several other vendors came out to survey what's left, trying to come to grips with losing the place that for many their livelihoods depend on.
Like everything is gone.
It's sobering to look at it. You know, it was here yesterday, and now it's gone.
It's overwhelming. It's devastating.
Abdullah Luwendi and his family have operated a stand at the market for more than 30 years. He says they're heartbroken, but it's their employees that they're worried for the most.
To have to tell my staff that have been with me for 15 years or so that we can no longer keep them on just because they're trained for this part of our business. It's overwhelming.
Sylvia Racine ran an antique booth for 12 years at the market.
We're all one happy family.
She says, ironically, the vendors had just held a party earlier this week to celebrate the end of their Summer Tuesday sales. But now...
It almost looks like, you know, goodbye party for a moment.
But in spite of their incredible loss, many of the vendors say they're just thankful it was things that were lost and not people.
The material costs, like the things that we were insured for, it's irrelevant. It's minimal.
Merchandise, goods, whatever, we can all buy that again, that everybody is safe and sound.
And now as they look to the future, many vendors say it's their faith they'll rely on.
They have their trust in God and His control over things, and there's great comfort in that.
The one bit of good news for vendors, as Max mentioned earlier, is that most of their material damages should be covered by insurance. But again, it's going to take quite some time before they're back up and running as usual.
All right, thanks.